Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a Tech Moment on Cannabis Tech. I'm your host, Christina Etter. In this podcast, we take just a few minutes to talk about some of the exciting science and technology that's happening in and around the cannabis and hemp industries. Just a few weeks ago, I had an incredible opportunity to tour the Paragon Processing facility, which is in Colorado City, Colorado. And this facility is 250,000 square feet of storage and hemp processing mega center, pretty much. Today, I am online with Billy Chavis, who is the process engineer who handles distillation, extraction, and the drying processes that go into what they do at Paragon Processing. And he's going to talk to us about their facility and about their drying technology now that is going to be able to dry massive quantities of hemp biomass. Welcome to the show, Billy.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So before we dive into the actual drying technology, let's just take our audience members on a quick tour or a quick review of what Paragon Processing actually is and talk a little bit about that facility that's in Colorado City.
Absolutely. Paragon Processing is driven to help farmers in need. We are one of the largest facilities in the country. We are the largest facility in the country. We have 256,000 square feet, as you mentioned when you're opening up for us, which allows us to store up to 20 million pounds of biomass for farmers who are in need. This allows us to take process off of the field that may be either wet or dry, put it in a climate-controlled environment so that they don't risk losing any of their product due to mold, contamination issues, or anything else that could happen being outdoors here in Colorado or any other state.
Fantastic. And obviously, I mean, proper handling of this biomass is absolutely critical. We know that there's problems with contaminants, there's problems with molds, mildews, different types of things. So obviously processing is going to be one of the most important pieces of producing quality products. So talk to us now about how critical these drying processes are in terms of really getting the most from their crops, I mean, for farmers and producers.
Well, I'd like to start with our quarantine process because that's where it starts in the beginning as it intakes material into the facility. Our quarantine process is second to none. We bring every super sack or every bale that we bring into the building, we test in 3 different areas. We weigh them, we mark them, we barcode them for tracking. As we do that, we'll send test results out for a lab for 24 hours and keep this in a quarantine storage for those 24 hours until we have the results back. Just in case we're dealing with any pesticides or heavy metals or microbials that could be airborne, we don't contaminate anybody else's biomass. So we make sure we keep a nice, clean, and sterile environment. The quarantine area is dealt with the intake and outtake of air through HEPA filtration, in addition to sterilization throughout every batch. So if we were to bring in somebody's batch one day and we would put it into our quarantine area or quarantine trailers, we would then sterilize the entire room, switch out all the filtration, and then have access to be able to do somebody else's material. So there's no layover or crossover. After we've determined that the material is in fact safe to bring into the generalized environment, we offer a number of processes. One of those processes is storage. Being that we might not be everybody's first choice for biomass extraction and or production, we would then be able to store it until they found the right processor for their own good. Or if we were to have being backed up with several months worth of extraction, which we're heading into the market of being, we'd be able to store that into a climate controlled environment until we're able to process it for somebody. In addition to just being able to store it, we are offering drying. Our drying services have led us into a position where we can currently do around 4,000 to 6,000 pounds of wet an hour. And we have on delivery 2 more dryers that are arriving in the next few weeks here that increase our capabilities 5,000 pounds per hour per dryer. So total, we're looking to have between 14,000 and 16,000 pounds of wet material being able to be dried an hour.
That is absolutely
which puts us in a very good position. Right, and this helps those farmers that are cutting down in very humid environments. So if somebody's Northern California, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, somewhere areas in the Northeast, including Connecticut, parts of New York, Massachusetts, and they would normally have to store their material in a humid environment. This allows them to get it out of the humid environment right away. We dry it for them, and then we put it into our climate-controlled area until we can process it or send it wherever they'd like to have it processed.
Fantastic. So Tell me a little bit about this drying equipment specifically, and through your drying capabilities, what are the end results? I mean, how much, you mentioned how much it can process, but how does the equipment actually work to dry that biomass, and then how much of the moisture is actually removed when it goes through the dryer?
So we have done conversion of an industrial scale dehydration unit, which allows us to do things in mass volumes. This dehydration unit was designed to make a dog treat or a pet jerky. We're able to control the belt speed depending on the moisture level. So typically we would see moisture levels coming in between 40 and 60% moisture. We want to reduce that to 10% or less to be able to have into a cured environment, which is storage, which is stable, to not allow it for any microbial growth or issues. Depending on what the moisture level coming in, we can adjust the belt speed to make sure that we're getting it out. The 4,000 to 6,000 pounds an hour was a range due to if we were able to get material coming in at 40%, it would take just slightly less time than something at 60%. So being that this was originally a dehydration unit, it works pretty well for our capabilities of what we're looking to do here. It applies a recirculating fan, supplemental heating, which we don't heat above 120 degrees, and then we pull out the moisture out of the top of the dehydrator with an exhaust fan. So very typical of what you'd see in a large-scale dehydrator, but we've industrialified it and changed it around to be applicable towards hemp.
Okay. So for all of these hemp producers, obviously this year in the United States, hemp has had a record-breaking year for the number of acres planted. But there's obviously a problem with the number of processors that are in the United States. So how do hemp farmers actually first start the process of working with Paragon then?
Well, you can contact us. Our information is available on our website, and I'm sure through your blog somewhere. Once they contact us, they let us know what type of services they need. We would then enter into a contract with them so that we're both liable for our end of the deal. Depending on what the processing needs were, whether it's just drying and storage, or processing through crude, or processing through distillate, or even through isolate, whatever the customer may need, we would contract every step of the way to make sure that we're held liable if we have any issues with the biomass, or they're held liable if it shows up with pesticides or heavy metals or some sort of intake of material that we're not able to take it into the building. It would have to be returned to them. So we're just contacting us, contacting our sales teams, setting up a appointment, walkthrough, a contract. We're open to all of those possibilities. And as soon as we're contracted together, we start taking in the material. The material is gone through our quarantine process, and then we start our contracted obligation with them.
And you can contract out then with anybody in the United States. So if someone, like you said, in say Kentucky wanted to ship their hemp over to you, then you would be able to process that for them as well?
Yes, and if the hemp was wet, we would suggest getting a reefer truck, something that's capable of keeping at colder temperatures. Having wet hemp in a wrapped plastic thing would give you a higher chance of degradation. The colder the temperature that you store it at, the less degradation you're going to get. So we would just inform the customer of what was needed to get the hemp to us safely so that we were capable of drying it for them without having any issues.
Fantastic. So what else is on the horizon for Paragon?
All over the country. Well, Paragon, as the country's largest facility, we want to stay on the cutting edge of technologies. We're working on developing new technologies every day. We're looking to make our processes more efficient. We've designed a next level of extraction machine to make more crude. Our current machine will do roughly 2,000 pounds an hour. Our new machine does anywhere from 7,000 to 10,000 pounds an hour. So we've developed that from scratch. It's proprietary technology, and we hope to continue to stay on the innovative and cutting edge side of the industry.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Billy. I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking to our audience about what Paragon Processing does, and your drying capability just sounds absolutely incredible. It's nice to hear that there are some solutions out there to help keep from losing some of those hemp crops that we know are not going to be processed right away because we're just so short on processors. So I will make sure that we add out here where people can go to talk to Paragon. In the meantime, thank you again for being on the show today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.